Good evening and welcome to The Right Side, the show where we talk about today's news, views, trends, and opinions from an admittedly conservative perspective. I'm your host, Chris Pareja, and this evening I'm joined by Pastor Pat Chen. She's with First Love Ministries International, and we're going to be talking this evening about something that many people may not even know happens in this country anymore. We hear the talk of us no longer being a Christian nation and people being much less prayer-focused or spiritually centered. But Pastor Pat and many people like her actually spend a lot of time in the national capital praying for and with our elected officials across the spectrum, and we're going to learn a little bit more about that this evening. Pastor, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be with you.
So, as I said, it seems that there's this thought that goes around that we're moving away from God, and especially within electeds, and we need to separate church and state. But you and many people like you are very involved, praying for the country, up close and personally with the electeds, for the electeds, their staff, and the chaplains on the Hill. Let's learn a little bit about you and your background. How did you get involved in such a thing in the first place?
Well, many years ago, I was a prayer leader in a local church. And a time of just prayer and seeking God, what was on the heart of the Lord. And he really told me that he's concerned about people, and not people within the church, the local church, but people everywhere. And he was concerned about our nation. And so it's a very long story, very complicated, but making a long story short, I found myself just maybe one day going into the Senate chaplain's office, and found myself on my knees his third day on the job, praying with him and praying for him. That's a little bit of it. I've told you a lot in a short period of time here, but...
So, two questions. Where were you when you felt called to represent the nation in this way?
Oh, dear.
Like where, city-wise?
Okay. I was reared in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
That's... from a baby. That's really the city that I love.
Okay.
I love the San Francisco Bay Area. I love Oakland. But the city of my childhood is Washington, D.C.
Okay. So it was a coming home for you to go back to share this part of yourself and God with these electeds. And were you physically in the California area at that point, and then decided to go back, or you were already in Washington, D.C. and doing things in that area?
This was actually before I came to the San Francisco Bay Area. I've been here about 25 years, but actually I've been doing prayer ministry long before then.
Okay. And so when you're talking about being involved in prayer ministry, you're on the boards of several influential organizations nationally. Tell us a little bit about that part of your resume. Well,
I'm a part of the National Prayer Committee, which helps sponsor the National Day of Prayer for the whole U.S. And so I'm with a variety of people from different walks of life, and their heart is to pray for our nation and to see it really turn to God.
Right. And so some people, when it comes time for the National Day of Prayer, some people are excited by that, some people are offended that it still occurs. Do you think it's going to be around a while?
I believe so.
Okay. And so any interesting stories that you've taken from just your involvement in that? One of the things that's interesting is if you look at various congregations and pastors and things from around the country, even from around cities, sometimes it's hard to get them coordinated to do anything. Is it easier for that event, or is it about the same of herding cats?
I believe that that's been one of the key things that has helped many of the churches from different denominations to actually come together and to have one particular day that they gather together to pray and to have that one common purpose, praying for our nation. So as I've seen it, and I believe that many that have been involved with the National Day of Prayer and the National Prayer Committee, it's a unifying factor.
Okay, so it brings people together.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. And so you're part of that organization. Are there others that you're a part of that for this particular type of initiative in the outreach to the electeds?
The Mission America Coalition, which is probably the largest coalition of denominations and pastors and leaders, ministries. I'm a part of the board of directors that their emphasis, again, is praying for our nation and praying for every child. And the hope is that many will have their hearts changed and will turn and come to know the Lord.
Okay. And so one of the things that's always been very interesting in our interactions is that you've made it very clear from the beginning that when you're going in, this isn't a party-specific initiative. You're going in as a minister to all people.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, I think that there are rumors or assumptions that float around where people think, you know, one party is this way, one party is that way, but you really cover the spectrum.
Absolutely. I believe that I have to go in to Capitol Hill as nonpartisan. As a minister of the gospel, I don't serve a party. I serve God.
Right.
I serve the Lord. And so when I go into Washington, D.C., I go in as a chaplain, so to speak. I go in to serve, to bless, to respect, to honor, to pray for, to encourage. That is my heart's desire, is to go in and to help people to feel loved and accepted. And I believe that when I do that, and those that go in with the same heart and purpose, sometimes hearts get softened. And before you know it, sometimes people probably are making different types of decisions than what they normally would make.
Or are at least open to having discussions with people in a peaceable way, as opposed to the animosity we see on the various news channels and everything else.
Well, that actually makes me think about one of the congressmen that I went in to see, and I had another person with me, and this particular congressman was hoping that I would stay for 2 minutes. Well, when we came into the office and we sat down, and he saw that we were genuinely interested in him. We cared about his family. We wanted to know what were the things that he would have us pray for. And before you know it, instead of a 2 or 3 minute visit, we were there about 30 minutes. And he didn't want us to go. And he says, you know what? This has turned out to be a very delightful time. He says, I've so enjoyed this. You know, please come back again and see me. And that is what I believe that we need to be about, and especially people like myself, that he wanted to share about his family. He wanted to share that these are my needs. Would you pray for me? And many times we find different leaders that they will even cry in their office. They're human, just like us.
Right.
But when they know that you care for them, that you're not there with another agenda to get whatever it is that you want, but that you're in there for the purpose of supporting them and encouraging them. You're not there to judge them, or you don't particularly care for their particular policy. But as a minister, I've come to encourage. Their hearts are touched and they're changed. So that's really what I'm about.
Right. And so one of the other things that I think is interesting is people may not know, we hear all of this talk about separation of church and state, and religion has no place in the government, which I disagree with. I think that, it, as you're pointing out, it helps to break down walls. But you shared with me that there are chaplains that are actually paid for out of the budgets of the federal government. Not just one that covers the House and the Senate, but each has its own.
Right. That's correct.
And you interact with these chaplains as well.
Yes, I do. I do. The chaplain of the U.S. Senate is Barry C. Black, and he was involved with the, was involved with the Navy, and a tremendous, wonderful man of God. I met him on his first week, his third day of his particular role, and have prayed with him ever since. So it's been about 11 years that I've been meeting with him and praying with him. And when I first walked in, to his office, he said basically, "Oh my goodness, I'm so glad that you're here." He says, "I need someone to pray with me." Well, he's one of the most powerful, wonderful men of God. But one of the things that I so appreciate about him, as well as the House of Representatives chaplain, is that they are nonpartisan. Their congregation is the Senate. Whether you be Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever your views are, that they look at them as, you're my congregation. So Father Conroy, who is the chaplain for the House of Representatives, the same way. No, they're not all Catholic, but for him, that is their congregation. And this is how I go into Capitol Hill to meet with the various leaders, the staffers, whoever the Lord sends me to. And I believe that this is how God wants us to be. This is what he has spoken to me. Perhaps some others might be lobbyists and they go in and they have a particular agenda, but that's not my purpose. I go in for a spiritual reason.
Okay. And so you started to allude to it a minute ago, that these are humans. I mean, we tend to want to look at people who are of an opposite opinion on one issue or another as some kind of monster or animal or someone that we may personally just find tremendous issue with, and we take it out on them personally in some cases, or you see the banter on Facebook or wherever it happens to be, people just vitriol and hatred and just unleashing, and they forget that human element. To the degree you're able to, talk to us a little bit about what they ask for prayer for. Is it personal? Is it about decision-making process? What do you hear or see or volunteer to these folks and their staffs?
I find for the most part, they ask for wisdom. They do want to do the right thing. They may not always do the right thing. Many of them that have come into this role of public servant came as a calling, and they went in there to do good, and then something happened over a process of time, and that changed that. And so we have to look at each one of our congressional leaders as people just like you and I. And so they want to do good. They want to do what is right. So those that are prayer warriors like myself, our determination is to pray that they do right and do right. And for me, is doing right biblically speaking, whatever the Bible says to do. And sometimes they don't always do that. But I and those like myself cannot go in and be harsh and critical and being able to win them over. Our warfare and our prayers should be for them. That is our warfare, is our prayer. That is, we talk to God. Then some others may go, and sometimes they'll be open to hear maybe a different opinion from us. But I don't go in to tell them what to do. I go in to pray for them and then believe that God's going to help them or send advisors around them. And then if they would ask, now, if they ask for my opinion, that's another story.
Right.
But if they do not, that's not why I'm there. And I do believe that we have a big God, and I believe that He is answering our prayers. It may not be in the timing that we want. We may not be seeing things right now in the way that we would like. But I do believe that God is big and He's answering our prayers. He's doing things behind the scenes that we have no idea.
Right. Well, you're operating more as a spiritual nurse.
Well, I am.
Right. You're there to provide service, encouragement, healing, regardless of what somebody does outside the hospital. I mean, you're there to serve in that capacity. And if a conversation comes up, a conversation comes up. So do they ask you to pray a lot of times? I mean, these guys are separated, and women are separated from their families in many cases by thousands of miles.
That's what their prayer requests most times are concerning their families. Again, concerning wisdom, their families, again, they want to do the right thing. They want to do good for their people. those are the type of things that they usually ask prayer for.
And so do you see differences in receptivity or even outreach from those folks and their staffs at different times, or in scenarios like recently we've had the Paris attacks, we've had San Bernardino, and there's more of a concern. I mean, just talking to people out in the world, they're concerned, they're fearful, they're confused. Do you see a change, or does it stay pretty constant, the type and frequency of request?
Well, more than ever, we don't know what to do. More than ever, our congressional leaders don't know what to do. I find that that's one of the best places that we are at this point, because we are coming to the place that we are needing spiritual help. We're needing something great, to hear something from God. And so that's, from my perspective as a minister, that's a good thing that we're seeing. So I believe a lot is happening. I don't know how to say it better right at this point, but I believe a lot of things are happening in the background that we're going to see some changes in the days ahead, because we're at the point where we're at the end of ourselves. We're at the end of how much we know. We're at the end of it all, and we're open to help from others that maybe in the past we would not even consider to receiving information from.
Well, on an individual basis, that's when a lot of people turn to God, is when they reach that point of realizing they can no longer handle it on their own.
That's right.
And you're saying as a country, you're seeing that we're probably reaching that point as well.
I believe so. Mm-hmm.
And so you say change and things going in a different direction. I mean, what does that mean to you, change? It's a nebulous term, and people are now much more suspicious of the word change if they want to know, what does that mean?
What I'm talking about is first, change of heart, change of attitude, change of perspective. You have to have a change of heart before you have change of action. Things that we do, we have to have a change of mind. And again, when we get to the point that we don't know what else to do, we've done all that we know to do, and things still are not turning out right, then we have to go to God. And that means that we have to humble ourselves. And our nation is at the point of humbling itself. And we need an answer. And so we seek, sometimes we've been seeking answers from other people that may not always have the right answers for us, but now we're seeking God. There's a lot more seeking God than I believe that we have any idea of behind closed doors.
Right. And so you mentioned the H word, humble.
Humble.
In the context of politicians, which is an interesting perspective that you bring. Mm-hmm. Through the work that you and other ministers like you have done, do you see that humbleness manifesting itself in some of these politicians, that we might not see that same way on TV or in the papers?
What comes to mind is there was a particular congresswoman that I was attending a reception, and I was asked to pray for this particular person. And I had my own personal views. And God really worked in my own heart, because when I got down on my knees beside that person to pray, and this particular person did not believe in the things that I believe in, did not necessarily believe in some of the biblical values that I have, I found myself getting full of love for this person. And I found that I changed as I prayed for someone that was totally opposite in terms of my particular biblical beliefs. And so I believe it's on both sides. But I also felt that as I prayed for this particular person, that she knew that something was happening, and there was a melting away of even my heart. And I believe there was a softening of this person's heart. And so there's a spiritual dynamic that goes on that we can't really define. But when something happens, in between you and another person, because God's presence is there and you genuinely care for that person, you're different. And so who knows, because of that particular one special prayer time, that maybe in the days ahead there'll be some new decisions made by that particular person.
And it's humbling, even if you know that you've heard people are praying for you, but when you see them next to you and it's close contact, there's an intimacy that is built from that as well. And it is a humbling process. So.
Well, I agree.
Well, I appreciate you coming and sharing your passion this evening. If people want to learn more about your ministry, or just even reach out to you to figure out how they can get involved or do other things with similar ministers, is there a website or an email address they can reach out to you?
My website is First Love Prayer, www.firstloveprayer.net.
Okay, excellent. Well, Pastor Pat, thank you for joining us. And if you'll hold on for just a moment,
okay.
We'll be right back after a word from our underwriters, the Conservative Forum.
The Conservative Forum of Silicon Valley began with 20 conservatives meeting at a restaurant in November of 2003. Our mission is to promote the principles of American liberty through education. By 2012, we had grown to over 600 paid members. Our monthly meetings feature well-known and prestigious conservative speakers addressing issues that are critical to our country's very survival. This includes speakers like Victor Davis Hanson, Andrew Breitbart, David Horowitz, and many others. In addition to our monthly meetings, we sponsor a conservative local cable access TV show, The Right Side, covering today's topics. Our Constitution discussion group not only teaches the Constitution, but started our annual essay contest that awards 2 $1,000 scholarships to local high school seniors. We are a virtual clearinghouse for grassroots organizations by providing them with table space at no charge in our exhibit area. There are typically a dozen groups represented. If you are like-minded, join us at our next meeting and become motivated and empowered. Liberty, made in America.
And welcome back to The Right Side. That was a word from our underwriters, the Conservative Forum. We appreciate them tremendously. As we're ending out this 4th season, they've already agreed to underwrite and have underwritten the next season as well. So that'll be 5 seasons that they've made this show possible. And so, again, we just appreciate them tremendously. But what they're best known for is their speaker series. And for example, this evening, Tom Fitton will be speaking at the IFES Portuguese Hall. This normally happens on the 2nd Tuesday of each month at 7 o'clock in the evening. But that happens at 432 Stearland Road right here in Mountain View, California, about 3 minutes from here. And upcoming speakers include James Lilacs, American journalist, columnist, and writer of the Athwart column for National Review magazine. And in March, Kevin D. Williamson, roving respondent for National Review as well, and author of several books, is going to be covering the intersection of economics, public policy, and culture. If you'd like more information, you can find that at theconservativeforum.com. And as Pastor Pat was sharing with us this evening, again, we hear all of this talk of separation of church and state, and why should religion or spiritual concepts be involved in government. But as you can tell, even from a secular perspective, one of the things that is clamored for in this country is more communication, people dropping the barriers, reaching out to people across the political spectrum and talking to one another as humans. And whether you believe in the power of prayer or not, with those kinds of results occurring, it just makes sense to not only allow it to happen, but I think to encourage it to flourish. You can find out more about Pastor Pat, her ministry, and maybe other ministries you can reach out to through her website at firstloveprayer.net, or you can look her up on the web as well. We thank you very much for joining us this evening. Again, this has been The Right Side. I've been your host, Chris Pareja, and would love to see you in person or on the show again sometime soon. But if you just can't wait, reach out to us at therightsidetv@gmail.com, and we'll try to answer any questions you have or take your opinions as you're willing to give them. Thanks again, and have a great night.